2. All right, we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next half an hour with you all. We've got lots of great questions coming up here that you all have submitted previous to this conversation. I know we've got folks joining us live who will certainly add to that list of questions here. So before we get kicked off, I just want to say thank you everyone for taking time to join us here live. If you're rewatching this, thank you for watching this. We really encourage you to share this with your community as this is such a relevant and important topic, and we want to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. And so if you are here live with us, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules before I pass the mic to our guest speaker. Again, we want to hear from you. You're taking time out of your day to be with us live. So with that said, I've muted everyone upon entrance just to avoid any background noise, but you have my full permission to hop off mute whenever you have something you want to share. I just ask that we be respectful of everyone so that we can hear everyone's voices, and let's just have one person off of mute at a time. And if you're not sure when to hop off mute, you can just write to me in the public chat or write to me privately. Some folks even raise their emoji hand, and that can cue me, let me know that you want to hop off mute. But again, big point there is we want to hear from you. So feel free to share your voice. You can also write in the chat box anytime you want to share anything, any tips and tricks of your own, any of your personal, journeys that you want to share, because I find that this is a great time to really practice, the power of digital community, even though we're not in the same space. We're all here online, and so you can drop any questions, any helpful resources, links to anything in the chat box as well. You can also use this time to network amongst yourselves. So if you're here live with us, or if you're rewatching, go ahead and drop in the comment section or in the live chat here any links on how we can support you, the work that you do, or connect with you on any form of social media. All right, so with that said, I just want to pass the mic over to Helen. I've had the privilege of moderating a couple of her conversations here today. And so Helen, for those who have not joined a chat, can you just introduce yourself and let us know what you're excited to share with us today?
Okay, yes, thank you, Mariella. I am Helen Sanchez, obviously, and I started my own firm a couple of years ago called Tanagui Career Consultants, and I do coaching and counseling for women over 40 on their career goals and how to achieve those goals, identifying the goals and achieving the goals. I, prior to that, had a 35 plus year career in staffing and recruiting, managing a virtual team for the last 14 of those years that was all over the country. And so my background is pretty extensive in recruiting, in understanding how to present yourself, in interviewing, appearance, all of those important pieces of the job search. And I enjoy sharing those with some of my clients one-on-one and in these events. So I appreciate everyone joining today, because I know this is a busy time of year for most people. And I appreciate the questions because, as Mariella said, we get such wonderful questions.
Absolutely. And just before we get our questions kicked off here, how can folks connect with you after this conversation, or those who are rewatching this chat on YouTube or on Power to Fly later? What's the best way to connect with you, Helen?
Well, you can go to my website, which is tanagui.com, and on the screen is the spelling of it. It's actually named after my children, so it's a little different. Or you can just email me at hdsanchez@tanagui.com. Or on LinkedIn, you can find me. So any one of those avenues will lead a path to me, and I'm more than happy to answer additional questions or speak with anyone.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can open up these awesome conversations, these awesome questions that you all have submitted for this conversation today. And I just want to remind you all, if you're joining us and you didn't get a chance to submit a question, please at any point, just drop those questions in the chat box or feel free to hop off mute. Something might come to mind as Helen is responding to these questions here. And again, I want to make sure that everyone's voice is being heard as you all are taking time out of your busy schedules. All right. So we've got Columbus, Georgia representing. As I said, I'm calling from Patagonia in Argentina. Helen is calling from New Jersey. So if you're just joining us, go ahead and drop in the chat box. Let us know where you are in the world. And again, you have full permission to network in the chat box, drop any links, to resources that you want to share as well. I really want to make this as interactive as possible. All right, Helen, let's start with this first question here. After a 14-year career in the software industry, my last job was an engineering manager. I took a sabbatical to write a book. 10 years later, I'm trying to get back to an entry-level position in tech, but I'm having trouble explaining my gap and preference for an entry-level job. What advice would you have to position this in a favorable way for recruiters?
I think that one of the fundamental pieces of your job search is always your resume, especially when you're coming back or after a certain age. You want to make sure that your format is something that will not give away your age or perhaps give an experience, a 10-year gap without an explanation. So you really need to look at, what did you do in those 10 years? You wrote a book, but what tools did you use to write the book? You used research, you obviously communicated, you did meet deadlines, you must have, I would assume. So all of those pieces are transferable skills. So when you write your resume, you need to be sure and highlight your transferable skills, as well as your achievements and your technical skills. The other thing is that you need to, it's a 5 to 7 month journey minimum to find a job when you're aged, quote unquote. I use that word loosely. So part of the job of finding a job today, and especially because we have access to so much information, is researching. So if you know you want an entry-level job in an industry, then you need to start researching those job descriptions and looking at what the requirements are. It doesn't have to be even in your market. You can research job descriptions across the country and get a sense of what is it they're looking for in an entry level. So you ensure that your skills and your resume reflect the transferable skills that you have that meet what they're asking for, so that those fundamentals are met. You need to make sure too that unless it's a creative job or graphics or those types of jobs, your format, your template needs to be classic, because the applicant tracking systems will sometimes get confused if you have columns and if you have graphics or emojis on your resume. It will confuse the applicant tracking system and you might not even get through. So you need to stand with a good format. As far as the technology part of your job, you were out for 10 years. Hopefully, when you're looking at job descriptions and you look at some of the things that are needed, you can find online training so that you can update your training skills and add that to your resume. That's very important when you have a gap, and it's very fairly simple to do today, really, because there's so many opportunities for online training today. So those are the ways that you need to present yourself. Now, you're asking about positioning it in a favorable way. Well, I think if you're staying current on opportunities in the technology industry for software and such, then that's favorable. If you are putting transferable skills that apply to that industry and that job, that's favorable. The other thing is that you need to research the companies that you decide to apply to. You need to research their mission, the projects they're working on, the work that they're doing, because when you sit down with them, whether it's on Zoom or in person, you need to relate your experience and the things that you've done. What you've done in that 10-year gap is experience. Even though you were doing it personally, it was valuable experience and it gave you valuable skills. So you need to relate all of that to the company, to what that company is trying to achieve, to what their passion is. And then you need to say that's what your passion is. You need to show the excitement and the passion for what they're doing, so that that's what makes you stand out. That's what makes you say to them, you know, I'm excited. I understand this is what the company is doing. I'm excited about that. I'm passionate about it. And my goal is to join a strong team and be able to make a contribution, type of thing. So that kind of puts you in a position where you're saying that you're willing to do that, and that's what you want to do. If you've had any interaction on teams in the past, cross-generational teams, or if you've been working one-on-one projects with your editors or whoever it is you wrote your book with, those are important things for you to show in your skills, in your work experience. The other thing is something that some people shy away from, and that's unfortunate because they say today 70 to 85% of jobs are found that way. It's networking, as I say. There's just not enough of it that you can do. And a way to do it is when you identify companies that you're interested in, you filter down on LinkedIn and find people in those companies. You look at those profiles. You look at, is there some common ground that we have? Did we go to the same school? Did they do a blog? Did they do a podcast that I can listen to? And then reach out to them and say, I'm trying to open a door into this role. I see that you started in this role when you began in the industry. Perhaps you can give me some pointers. If you just have 15 minutes of your time, I would greatly appreciate it. When you flatter people and you ask them for their help, most of the time people respond positively. And then you start to develop that relationship. So the keys are that you learn something from that interaction, but also your name is in there. So then if you're applying for a job in that company, you've already made a connection. You can go back to that connection and say, oh, I see there was an opening. I applied for it. Do you have any additional input that you can give me? So that's very important. And you also, another thing that you can look at, if you Google returnships, you'll get a lengthy list of companies that do returnships, and you can research whether any of those pertain to your background, and you can apply for those. And they are more limited, and they are more, they run at certain times of the year. But part of the value of that is that you'll identify companies that do those returnships, and obviously they embrace people coming back into the workplace. So you look for other jobs in those companies because those companies are going to be favorable to your background.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful response. And I see that we've already got folks networking in the chat box. So you see that Helen has highlighted, what did you say? Networking. You can't do it enough. So feel free to drop any links to your preferred way of networking, even if it's your email or a website that you're working on or a project that you're supporting. I do recommend that because yes, Helen, I definitely agree with you. Sometimes it can, make you really nervous or even make you turn you off in a lot of ways just because there's a lot of noise online. But I think if you're really trying to look out for developing your career in a holistic way, there is a right way to network. And I'm sure that folks can connect with you when we finish this conversation to learn maybe some of the do's and don'ts in your opinion.
Yeah, and you have to approach it not as okay, I'm reaching out to this person for them to open a door or help me get in there. No, it's to build a relationship. It's to make a connection and then expand, because that person may know a person or that person may have insight that will help you. So it's really a relationship. It's not, if you approach it as an individual connection, contact, and I'm done, you won't be successful.
Right. That's leaving it superficial, and we don't want that. It's enough of that happening around. We want to dive in deeper there.
Right. And you want to give value to the person that you're connecting to. And absolutely, I would think with your background that you can definitely do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to this next question here. And if you hear your question come up and you're live with us, please let us know that this was your question so that we can make sure that we get it answered. And again, if you have any questions or reflections that come to mind, we want to hear from you. We've got about 15 minutes left. Time is going to fly by. So please, we want to hear from you all. All right. This next question reads, what should you do if your company is continuously getting younger?
I have to say, before I even answer that, I just graduated this year from college. So I sat with 20-year-olds in a classroom, and there's a lot of fun in it. So you have to have an open mind, and you have to look at it that there's a value on both sides. So you can speak with your manager or with HR. I would suggest you do some research on the success and value of cross-generational teams and mentoring experiences. And you can go present a suggestion that maybe they can create cross-generational teams so that the people who have experience in the company bring that experience the learning curve becomes smaller with that experience. And the people who are new to the company, the younger people who are new, they bring value because they have a new perspective, a different perception than you do. So there's a give and take. So I would suggest that you take advantage of all those experiences and suggest creating cross-generational teams within departments, or mentoring programs where a current employee mentors a new employee. Because if you do some research, you'll see that cross-generational teams are more successful, they are more productive. So if you do that research and bring that with you and sit down and say, this is how we can be even better, that should open doors for you and put you in a position where you're a role model. So I would suggest that.
I love that. I love that. It's a very holistic view of it. And it's honest and it's real. I love that there's this like data point, like we need to find the research to be able to bring that up, to have the confidence in knowing that, but it's a clear statement. So I have a private message here. What should someone do if they feel they are experiencing ageism in the workplace?
Well, I did that myself, so I hear you. It's difficult. You have to kind of become very conscious of how you present yourself. You need to be energetic. You need to be excited about what you're doing, so that you're not contributing to anyone's perception of ageism. But as far as any remedy for it, you would need very specific documentation, and most companies and most employers are much too smart for you to have that. But if you're talking about microaggressions where someone may be saying, oh, Gramps can answer your question, or whatever comment that's unacceptable, that you can easily confront directly by saying, excuse me, I don't think I heard you right, and make them repeat whatever they said. If it's coworker, if it's not management, you can ask them nicely to repeat it, because when you put the spotlight on them and you put them in that position, they're not so quick to say what really is probably a derogatory comment about someone's age. So I think that those are your options, really, to again try to confront it. If it's a coworker, if it's a manager, you would have to go to HR. If you have documentation, if indeed, I know I was overlooked for promotions once they were aware of my age. So it's difficult because in my case, they moved people around laterally. So the position they promised me wasn't there anymore. So it just depends on what's happening. But I think you just, again, need to be aware of and ensure that you're presenting yourself with all the energy and enthusiasm that anyone would. And if you don't have satisfaction from management or HR, then you might consider looking elsewhere. If a company condones it, if there is no resource for you or remedy, then you might consider. But you can try those. You can, again, confront microaggressors, and you can always go to HR and express your concerns.
I'm wondering, I think this is also where like community building and networking might come handy as well, because I think that there are more folks experiencing these microaggressions than, of course, might be put out there. And so if you are networking or find, certain groups, discussion groups that are being transparent about this topic, I think that we are trying to bring some of these things to the surface more and more. Not all of us, of course, because it only benefits some people to bring it up. So I think the more that we can kind of dive in there on the community part, that we can find resources and maybe even just that extra, push to be more courageous to confront someone, let's say in the workplace, because it's not always comfortable to ask someone to repeat or, to try to stand up when you do hear those microaggressions. So again, that's just my other throw in there to continue networking, because I think that
you're absolutely right, Mariella. And something that you can do if it's an unfortunate situation is you can go to HR and ask them to include ageism discussions and ageism discrimination as part of the diversity and inclusion training that most companies provide, because it's not very common today, I think, for ageism to be part of that training. So if you have a concern and if you feel that the company or the manager is not really conducting themselves properly, then that might be a suggestion you make, that ageism training be included in diversity and inclusion training.
What about employee resource groups? I hear a lot of talk of folks, and I've interviewed a lot of folks who start their own, group based on whatever their identity is or whatever their interests are. So how would you recommend someone, starting an ERG, an employee resource group or affinity group around this topic?
Well, it's generally, in my experience, it's again done through HR. It's not something that you can just, again, the companies I work for, this may differ with smaller or larger, but you would have to go through it to HR and recommend that there perhaps be employee resource group that they begin with ageism in mind. Also, if you're interviewing for companies, you can ask them what employee resource groups they have, and that gives you some insight into the mindset of that company as well. But yes, that's an excellent suggestion, is to go to HR and ask them if you could organize a group based on experience and age.
Great. Actually, this is a great segue into the next question here. I don't mind working for someone younger than me, but how can I make this more clear to interviewers?
Again, I think that it's important for you. I don't know if you've had any experience, again, with cross-generational teams or mentoring, but if you've had that specific experience, if you've worked in the past with someone and this has been the dynamic, that's definitely something that you need to use as one of your stories when you interview, because when you're going to interview, you should be arming yourself with stories that would answer the questions you expect relative to the position, on your experience, on problems that you've corrected, on success and achievement that you've had specifically. And the same thing, if you've done anything in cross-generational teams, in mentoring, if you've suggested it, if you've recommended it, if you've been involved in the creation of it, or if you've just participated in it, those are all very important things to highlight. You should also talk about, in the past, I'm sure you probably do this, but if you've been managed by someone, or you've managed someone who's younger than you, I personally think that we all learn from each other, despite who's the older and who's the younger. We all have a different perspective, different set of eyes, and so we all learn from each other. And so I think that you need to discuss that. You can do all of that kind of generically. You can say, you understand the value of both more mature employees and younger employees kind of helping each other and sharing ideas, and all of that conversation would have to take place in your interview, whether it again be Zoom or in person, about you understanding the value of those relationships, you understanding the value that everyone brings to the table, you understanding the improved success when you have different perspectives from someone who's younger and might see this exact same scenario that you do to the way that you see it. They may not have the history that you have, so that that when that product was tried or that project was attempted 10 years ago, it didn't work. And so maybe it needs to be tweaked, but they come in with an idea, well, maybe we can change it this way. So there's value to all of that, but you need to not say, I'm okay working with someone younger, but you need to give specific examples if you have them, and you need to talk specifically about how you perceive it as a value.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I just want to let folks on the call know that we've got about 6 minutes left. So we would love to hear from you before our time runs out. So please let me know if you'd like to hop off mute or just drop a question in the chat box so we can get to you here. I'll hold for a light pause to see if someone wants to take that invitation to hop off mute now. Maybe some folks need that invitation. If not, I've got more questions. All right, be thinking. Okay, so Helen, let's move on to this next question here. I had to leave my full-time career to handle multiple health and financial crises. I rescued my family business, my aging parents' sole income source, cared for dying friends, and dealt with sudden health issues of my own. I'm very proud of how I handled these challenges, but how can I highlight my growth and achievements in these situations without sounding like I'm inviting a pity party? Does this advice apply to both resumes and interviews?
Um, you can talk about a gap in your resume, in your career, as personal. It's not necessary to go into details about what you did during that time frame, and certainly not something that you should detail on a resume. You can say, leave, personal leave, or however you want to phrase it, but it's not necessary to go to blow by blows. When you say, you can talk a little bit more about that in an interview, but on a resume, you need to be very generic. But when you say that you took care of aging parents, that you cared for dying friends, that you rescued the family business, there are so many valuable skills in all of those experiences that I can't even imagine you wouldn't be in any position except to say, I can bring so much to the table. You may have, as I've said in the past to other people, maybe you handled medical billing for someone, so now you understand that. Maybe you managed estate planning for someone. There's skills involved in all of that. There's experience in all of that. So when you manage the business, I mean, you say you managed, you rescued the business. So what does that mean? So did revenues increase from the time you came into the business to the time that you either sold the business or left the business or whatever happened to the business? Did revenues increase 100%? Did you increase your customer base 100%? Those are all the things that you need to list as specific achievements of yours, and as skills. Soft skills, transferable skills, also important. Communication, customer service, managing a team if there were employees in the business. So you need to reflect that in your resume. You need to have achievements, you need to have skills, and then you can put the dates for your personal leave, and you can put, again, details, bullet points on those specifics of what happened to the business, how did you change the business when you rescued it, what other responsibilities did you have when you were caring for people. So those are all important on your resume. And then in interviews, the really important thing for interviews is, number one, to research, to know the people that you're going in to meet as far as the company, the mission, what they're looking for, and then relate what you've done to that. But also, again, you need to think about personal experiences, and you don't have to be that specific to say, my friend died from, and they were whatever. No, you just say, I took care of, I was a caregiver for part of this period of time, and these are some of the responsibilities I had, and what I learned was to manage my time, to meet deadline, whatever it is, you need to apply that. So you need to be prepared when you go to an interview. You need to research and understand how your background is going to help them, because that's their goal, is to find someone to come in and help them. And your goal is to get the job. So to do that, you need to really make them see how what you've done will help you do the job they need done. So I think that, again, it's not necessary to put the specifics of what you had to do during that time frame, but what were the skills and experience that you needed to implement during that time frame. What did you learn? What are you bringing from it? And what successes did you have? Even though it was a difficult time, there had to be successes. The fact that you survived is a success, by the way.
Yes. I love the way that you are flipping that, because of course it can seem so overwhelming, and people, might not know where to begin and how to share, because it's been such a taboo in the workforce. So I love that you are, encouraging people to find ways to connect those transferable skills, essentially. So we are out of time. This always goes by super quickly with our office hours. Helen, can you remind folks, because I know that we've got Saja here had a question in the chat, but for anyone else who has a question that might come up after our time here, how can they connect with you so that they can ask you questions or just, pick your brain for any resources? Can you remind us?
Yes, of course. Thank you. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also email me at hdsanchez@tanagui, which is TANAGUI.com, or go to my website, tanagui.com, and send me a contact through that. But there's actually a choice for a free consultation, so you can always go in and do that. So those are all the ways. And yeah, I know the time goes very fast, Mariella, and so I appreciate everyone's time, and thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so Helen, I probably won't see you till next year, and and I look forward to moderating another conversation here. Thank you, everyone who has joined us for the past 30 minutes. Good luck, stay encouraged, be your authentic selves. Always reach out to Helen if you have any more questions, and she's happy to follow up, especially with that free consultation that you'll find on our website, and connect with her on LinkedIn. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you on the next chat.
Yes, enjoy your holidays and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.